I mean, to be honest, that was the most captivating part of or piece of information that I was introduced to, that you are a researcher around
Yeah.
Kundalini awakening. And to some extent, I came a little bit from this, oh, everything is awakening Kundalini because everything is tingling a little bit. And then our researcher, it has some kind of scientific seriousness around that. So I would be super curious about how was your or is your research looking like? What can I imagine when I hear you are a researcher?
Right. Well, I'm a self-appointed researcher. It's not that I've been trained or certified to or recognized in a worldly sense as a researcher. But what that means for me is that I have been in an ongoing process with intersecting circles or groups of very unique individuals over at least 12 years in some case, 8 to 12, approaching 12 years. So I've been able, with the support of these individuals as willing volunteers, to document the whole experience day to day as people are both having these extraordinary experiences, but at the same time living ordinary seeming lives. So documenting a day-to-day experience of being blown out, so to speak, or emptying or electrified, and having these incredibly supernatured experiences, but at the same time living in the world at large and relating to family, loved ones, operating in the workplace. So this documentation, day-to-day documentation with various individuals, and in many cases, individuals who have never met each other before, they've never had contact with each other, and remarkably, individuals who come from all walks of life, from all different parts of the world, different ages, different generations, coming together, having had no previous contact with each other, but clearly me being able to see, along with others as witnesses, that they are correlations, that they are patterned ways of being. And my deep interest has been to allow for those raw experiences to unfold as a natural matter of course, without systemizing or institutionalizing or developing any structured impositions on the experience, but to allow a wider crucible, so to speak, like a space-time crucible, where there's been no rush, no pressure to conclude, to draw any conclusions yet, but rather to allow that experimentation, so to speak, of a longer term process, and along the way to start at least correlating, to start recognizing what is corresponding even across this diverse spectrum of individual participants. So this is what I've been watching, as I said, with witnesses, is what is patterned, what arises and emerges over and over again, even though this is such a diverse collection of individuals awakening the Kundalini. And I have a contextual base. I'm initiated into the Tantric tradition. I'm born into Sanatana Dharma, which today is known as Hinduism by most people. So I have the inborn reference points for this Kundalini process in the individual, but I like to not impose it unless I'm asked or unless we're ready to be fascinated by the confirmations, by the affirmations of people who have been in a Kundalini awakening process for over thousands of years. So this is really what the research for me is. It's all about recognizing correlations and patterns and documenting, recording, and storytelling day to day.
And without trying to tame the universe, are there correlations, patterns, recurring structures that you can draw from the individual stories? I mean, without imposing something that is traditional, is there something where you really feel the research make something visible that is underneath of culture and underneath of background and underneath of the degree of preparation, something that people refer to over and over again in this process?
Yes, absolutely. It's very apparent. It's made visible. Mm-hmm. These archetypal or universal roles, and it's like a living myth. It's like participating in a living myth. That's a continuum, so to speak, such that, you know, there is an apparent beginning, middle, and end, and yet at the same time, it feels like a timeless recognition with co-creators. And you know, it's very often it'll be like we're sitting together, and as the Kundalini awakens, there's this understanding that, and people say this at different times over the years, they will say the same words, and they've never heard it said before, but they will say something like, we've been here before. We've been doing this before. So the recognition is made apparent over and over again. The recognition, the visibility of forms, of archetypes, but also function, a recurring function that is not separate from the form or the archetype. So the whole process is making visible innate functions of being, of interrelating, of co-creating, of sustaining, but also dissolving.
It's beautiful that I think you have been the first person talking about Kundalini in terms of reawakening. And I love that so much, because the more I become slowly familiar or more familiar with this incredible force, it is something of, this is known better by my system than anything else. Like, this is the beginning of the real reality. Everything before has been a make-up reality. And you then giving me this word of reawakening is something that, like, yeah, reflects this remembrance. This we have been here before. We know each other deeply. So the reawakening, could you talk more about that? I ask also from the background because in Western, I could say naive attempts to awaken Kundalini, it often comes with a kind of, first of all, it's not a process, it's a big bang, and then the universe, it's born, and then it's over. So that's the thing, a boom, and then the Kundalini is fully awakened. And secondly, it comes with a kind of force, as if it would be something external that has to be manipulated in order to starting to move, like as if it would want to sleep. So could you talk about the reawakening as the kind of, yeah, it has never been a way. It has never been something else than a core or an essence.